Striking to me is how much your film feels like a Malick film, and I realize you've worked with Malick for quite a long time now. And I'm curious what your relationship is with him as far as a filmmaking perspective.
Yeah, I've been working with Mr. Malick for a little under a decade, both as a second unit director and one of his editors, since the New World, and even to now working on currently editing his current pictures with the team. And so that was my past with him. And as far as this picture goes, we were together from the beginning on it, discussing conceptually the goals of the picture and the fundamentals of the production. And he had to continue with his own films, and I just assembled with his assistance a great producerial team, excellent cast, and all along he was encouraging, supportive, and a great corner man, like in boxing, just always a phone call away with assistance and support and guidance. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to him.
As far as Lincoln goes, obviously Lincoln's been in movies quite a lot recently, and your film has been in development for much longer than some of those movies even were. What, for you, why did you want to tackle Lincoln's youth?
It's a very mysterious part of his life, and I think it's unfamiliar to many. Some people know the sort of main story points, the loss of his mother, and of course the log cabin life. But some people don't even know that they don't even know that he lived in Indiana. They know Kentucky, they know Illinois, but they don't know the 15 years or so that he spent in Indiana, the hardships he faced, the difficulties that his relationship with his father had. He was a difficult man, and they sort of saw the world very differently. And so all these elements combined, along with showing the origin story of one of our greatest heroes, was so attractive.
You really portray in the film the dynamic that he shared in the relationship between the father and his son, and even the mothers as well. But there's like a very vast, emotional range between them. How was your approach to getting that on film?
Well, I'd say a lot of the emotional impact that the relationships in the film have are based on the incredible performances that were given by Jason, Diane, Brit, Wes, and then the completely fresh children, the cast of children, native Kentuckians. And our job there was not really to create emotional situations or fabricate something that was artificial and try to perform, but rather to capture what was already on set, like documentarians. And so with the tensions and relationships that were just already there conceptually in the narrative, they were just able to blossom out based on the actor's own spontaneity and what they brought to their own characters. If that answers your question.
How did casting go? How did you find the kids, especially?
Yeah, casting was led by a fantastic team of producer Jake DeVito and casting director Stephanie Cole, and they worked for about a year searching Kentucky in schools, sports venues, churches, to find real children with the right accent that come from the right kinds of towns, that have hard work ethic, experience with agriculture, animals, and so it was to find that voice and that authenticity that was so important, so that they could speak with the voice of Lincoln and his family.
I find it really fascinating that you have been so strict historically, keeping to the historic facts, while still really adhering to the lyricism that Malick and you have been able to conjure. How do you balance that kind of contradictory feelings?
Yeah, there are a few moments in the film historically to apologize for, slight ones, but I would say overall the balance of historical authenticity and, say, whatever poetic license one takes is something to always be conscious of. And I think that the poetry was already in the history, so that we just had to sort of tee up just slightly these basic checkpoints in the story. And excuse me, I'm fumbling. It was an excellent question, but yeah, I guess I would just say the poetry is already in the history, and I think it's very powerful. So
I find it striking that you used two different voices in the voiceovers. Some of them seem to be coming from Lincoln himself, more like I don't know what the word is for it. Kind of like spiritual thoughts, I guess, is how I kind of interpret it. But then you also have his cousin kind of narrating what happened. How did you decide what was going to be said in the voiceover?
The voiceover, all of it is based on an interview from the turn of the 20th century, published I think in 1902 by Eleanor Atkinson, who interviewed Dennis Hanks' cousin when the man was I think like 85 years old. And at that time there was this great surge of suddenly people realizing that they needed to document these years of Lincoln's life and search out the people that he knew, even though they were so old. They were about to lose them during that time. So luckily, all these great journalists seized on that. Ida Tarbell and Eleanor Atkinson specifically. But all the voiceover in the film is based on that interview, and it's the actual words being read by one of the actresses in the film's her grandfather. And McKenzie Blankenship plays Sally, but her grandfather, Hayes, does the voiceover with that beautiful accent of real Kentucky. And so, yeah, I really have great faith in that voiceover because of its truthfulness. Those are the words.
What was your research process? Obviously, you're very well read on the subject, and you have very deep knowledge of it. So, what was the research for the project?
There was lots of research, and I loved it. And so there was the main sources were our historical consultant, William Bartell. He's the greatest living Lincoln Youth Scholar out of Indiana, and he wrote a book called There I Grew Up. And then there's Benjamin Thomas's single-volume Lincoln biography, simply called Abraham Lincoln. The work of Ida Tarbell, Carl Sandburg, the Illinois poet, he takes a bit more of a poetic approach, and so there's some division among historians about his work. The Prairie Years is his book, but yeah, once you start studying Lincoln, it's a downward slope where you just start falling and you can't stop. You just keep. It's like it's so contagious, and you become obsessed. So, yeah, I love the research process, and we'll continue to do it even after the movie.
An attempt to recreate impact or like display impact. You always see the axe hitting things and children being beaten. And there's always a very conscious decision to make the feeling of that very important. Was that a conscious thing, or did it just come out in the editing, or?
It's an excellent question. I think I've never heard that asked before, and I think that's the main goal of the picture, was to make it experiential, to make it a sensory experience, so that the movie is more in your blood, and you're watching it from your heart and your soul, not as much in your brain. And so when you mention the feeling of the axe or the plowing or the disciplining of the children, that's really what I think, yes, photographically, acting-wise, and in editing, that's what we were going for, was not to be watching the film objectively, but to be within it and be right beside Lincoln, seeing what he sees, feeling what he's feeling, and be moved by it.
I felt like it was really strange when I was thinking about it, because I kind of related it to the idea that like Lincoln has left a lasting impact, and it was like a physical embodiment of that from his childhood. I don't know, it's kind of weird thought.
No, it's great. Yeah, I'm so glad you noticed that.
It was really good. Also, you really display the historical aspects of just living in that time period. You have the very austere cabin and the woodworking and field work. How did you get the actors to kind of work in that environment to feel natural? Because, I mean, it's not natural.
Yes, and so the environment created was wonderful, exactly as you described it. The production designer, Caroline Henanaya, created an incredible set and an overall ambience for everyone, so that when we arrived each morning, we were there. You know, we were no longer in the hotel, we were no longer in the van. We had returned to 200 years ago, so it was very easy to start filming. So I thank her for that. And in terms of the actors getting into it, there was her astounding work, but you know, Jason himself has that already in his blood and his physicality, being coming from a farm background. His father, I believe, is a farmer or a shepherd, and Jason didn't even take practice swings. The first day on set we shot that act scene, I said, you wanna try and take a few practice swings and see if you can hit the mark. And I couldn't do it if I picked the darn thing up. So but he said nope. So we put the camera right there, and wham, bullseye. He just got it right on the mark and did it again and again. The man is, I think he's 6'4". He's strong as an ox, and he was so perfect for the role. And but yeah, they fit right into all the pioneer life that was required of them.
It was great.
He's astounding.
I actually grew up on an Indian reservation, and when you see the Native American visit, he says like Novascano something. I know a little bit.
Oh my gosh! What reservation? What tribe?
I grew up in Salamanca. It's the Iroquois Seneca tribe.
Okay. Well, that's why you know it. Yeah, he was a Seneca Indian.
Oh, yeah. I was like, Indiana, would they even be there?
No,
sure.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm so glad to talk about this because I'm also moved that you even knew it and mentioned that. Do you know what he said?
It's like a greeting, and then he says something else.
Yeah, he gives a greeting, and he's telling I don't remember verbatim, but he's telling the children some advice about being good to their parents, being good boys. He's just talking about the day and maybe some. I don't remember the exact transcript, but it was just something very simple and that maybe an older man would say to some boys about stay out of trouble, be good. But and forgive me for whoever finds a more correct translation. But yes, his name was Gary Sundown, the actor. He was a Seneca Indian, and the tribes in Indiana at that time, the main one would have been Kickapoo, and they would have mostly been in the north. So there's a little creative liberty taken because down south they would not be as present, but there are certain accounts of natives in the area and even possibly mythologized ones about Lincoln meeting them. But I think that not only his experience with slavery but also with natives was important to show, because that would factor in later in life. Jackson had such what's considered now a negative effect on natives in America. I shouldn't say considered now, that was stupid. It was at the time horrible as well. And so, and Lincoln in some of his dealings was much more tolerant, much more open and encouraging. And so I just wanted to show that this notion of tolerance, of fraternity within our union was instilled in him from the beginning. And so that scene is very important and very moving. Braydon's expression in that scene is beautiful because he doesn't understand a word, but you can see his wonder at the language, at the clothes, at the physicality, and he has just a look of respect in him that I really like.
Exactly what I took away from it, just the feeling of respect for this foreign beast thing. I found it really fascinating. I mean, not only because I knew, I recognized what he was saying, but
is that in your heritage, or did you just live there?
I just happened to grow up there. Just the families lived there for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, really fascinating. I was really shocked to see it in the film, actually.
Gosh, I'm so glad. I hope I can talk about that more because I love that moment. It just I was moved by it too.
In terms of cinematography, you adapt a lot of the same visual style as Malick. What is it about that kind of constantly moving camera, really, really close up, facial shots, and you get to see people touching things and really close up. You see people holding insects and that kind of stuff. What is it about that look that you really like? And also, in terms of just being on set, is there any kind of organization to how it's going to happen, or do you just kind of let the people or the actors move around as they may and kind of adapt?
No, definitely giving them space to roam, and boy, there was plenty of space. We were out in the wilderness, and so the sensuality, be it in the rain or in the grass or in the trees, the discovery of insects, other animals, and the camera's focus on them is not premeditated or set up. There was no bring in the praying mantis, but rather that it was there, and so and Brit at the time chose to pick it up, and so. Yeah, there is an emphasis on nature, and the camera is roving, and that's for two things. I would say it harkens back to what you brought up about the experiential nature of the movie, it being a sensory experience that you enter into rather than watching it like a play. It makes you more participant, just as movement in life does. You roam, you look. Even now when I'm talking to you, my eyes go this way and that. I look up, I look down, I hear a conversation over there, and so it has more the feeling of consciousness. Sometimes there's extreme concentration, sometimes there's distractedness, but always moving. So there's that for experience's sake, but then also in editorial, my background's in editing. It was incredibly helpful for Alexander Milan, the editor, and I to have mobility in the camera for the sake of cutting in terms of jump cuts. The jump cuts are less noticeable when you move, and also we don't shoot coverage. Wide shot, medium shot, close up, okay, coming around over the shoulder. There's none of that. It's more like a documentary. And so the movement is essential if one's to cut a picture like that. There has to be uniformity from production to post in that style. So yeah, it's poetic but also necessary.
Shooting that way, you must end up with an insane amount of footage.
There was a good amount, yeah, and and it was very helpful. That's another reason. It's not out of, I think, lack of discipline or some great appetite to just, eat up everything. I think it's more important, again, editorially, to have lots of footage so that you're never in a bind. You never are needing to get out of something or to correct some shortcoming on my part on set, something that I failed to do. Lots of footage allows for lots of escapes, lots of salvation. Almost post-game corrections. So.
What is the editorial process when you have that, and especially since it sounds like you don't have like a solid script as far as what's going to happen on screen. As you let things happen, you obviously are going to have to sort through that in the editing process. How do you even approach that?
Well, our editing was very intimate. It was just Alexander Milan and I together for about 8 or 9 months, and I loved that process of just being very close and quiet and just working together all the time. And the process is one of reviewing all the footage, making selects being the clips that you want to work with, and you sort of string them together in a long line, and then you see what you have. And so instead of using a priori notions of, I want this scene to be this, and I'm going to fit it into my square, it was sort of allowing the footage to breathe as if you just poured it into a decanter and sort of seeing what it's like and allowing it to decide what it wanted to do. So yes, the script said one thing, but on set there was something else, and then in editing there's also something different. And so like a child, it's going to grow the way it wants to, and as a parent you can't force it to be what your notions of it are. You have to allow it to make up its own mind.
Right.
So
I'm curious to know why you started the film with the memorial. Right, it's the Lincoln Memorial at the very beginning. Why did you feel like that was important to start the film with that?
I wanted the beginning of the picture to feel like we were entering into something sacred, and almost like, because at DC it almost feels like a temple. It has the feeling of something mythic about it, almost like in ancient Greece, that they would build their temples to the gods, and he is a sort of god in the kind of Odysseus sense to America. He's our greatest hero, and so we all carry him around in our pockets on pennies and dollars, and we see him in insurance advertisements where he's animated and talking, and so there's been a lot of defiling of his image, and I just wanted the beginning to be a reminder of his stature, as if anyone needs that, though.
Right. There's a lot of orchestral music, and obviously the sound design is incredibly important to creating that realism. how did you think about how you were going to use the music to complement the naturalism of the sound designs?
Yeah, music is the most important thing in the world to me. That's what I love most about filmmaking. And so Hannon Townsend was the composer. The score is a mix of his music with a great majority of track music, licensed music. And so it's there's Alan Hovhaness, and Kalinyakov, and Copeland, Dvorak, and the music has, the approach there was that the images are somewhat intimate, small, poetic, which allowed for the music to be big. So the music is a sort of counterpoint in that way, where you're seeing something that could be perceived as commonplace, you're seeing something slight and small, just a child learning to read or responding to his dad disciplining him, but the music enters and suddenly you see something new in it. There's a new perspective that's saying, no, this is not just as you are seeing it. There's something else going on here. This is not just a boy being disciplined. This is not just him listening to a sermon. The music is saying, remember how this will affect him. Remember where this is going. Remember the fate that he's barreling towards, and that's what gives you chills. So the music completely transforms the picture to me and says, look for what else is here.
You also give in addition to giving respect to, obviously, everything, you give a lot of respect to books and how that changed him as a person. How did you decide you were going to include books into the film? Was that something that came out of the books that you read about him, or especially the chosen books? I saw a Bottom Crusoe book, and I can't remember the other one.
I'm so moved by how much you paid attention. I shouldn't say paid attention, but we're noticing these little things that really is wonderful to hear. Yes, the main texts in his life are well recorded, the ones that he was really studying in Indiana and loved. Books were few and far between. He was known for plowing fields, not for money, but for books. Well, he did sometimes for money, but back then, all money that you earned went to your father until you were 21. But oftentimes he would go and do chores in order to get a book. And they do talk about he read all the time. At the end of plowing a line in a field, he would sit down, and while he let his horse or ox rest, he would pull out a book. He'd always have a book in his shirt pocket. He would read until there was no more light. He would read in bed, at the lunch table, dinner table, all the time. And the main books that influenced them are Robinson Crusoe, of course, the Bible, Weems' Life of Washington, the Statutes of Indiana, I think Robinson Crusoe, if I didn't already say it, and then Pilgrim's Progress, which was the most read, beloved, famous book up until I think the 20th century. That was, people knew Pilgrim's Progress and they knew the Bible during that time in English and American history. And those are the real books too, by the way. I bought them years ago. Those are actual editions from the time. They're from about anywhere from 1800 to 1820. And so those I don't know what the kind of sketchings in there are called, but those are the editions, and those are the illustrations that he would have been looking at. And one thing that's so wonderful in thinking about books and how they affected him is that those illustrations are the first images he would have ever seen in his life. Nowadays we're so inundated with imagery everywhere. He had not seen an image printed until he opened those books. And so those books are not just the way we think of books today. Those books were a whole new universe that he suddenly was immersed in and that was revealed to him. And we can't even fathom that notion anymore, but it must have been so inspiring.
I'm actually, in addition to this, I'm a librarian, so
oh my God, God bless you.
I was really appreciative of that, because you did really go out of your way to show not only his handling of the books and how it impacted him, but the physical pictures that are within it. So that was really...
That's one of the things that's most important for me. Yes, the film has a certain artistic credibility that will be, I hope, appreciated by some, but I also hope that it reaches families and especially young people, say between the age of 9, 10, 15, even into high school, because there is nothing more important than self-education. School will only do so much for you, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but boy, you need to take up that task on your own. and have it be lifelong, your own education. So, yeah.
I guess that's the last question. Because this has taken you so long to actually complete, how many years were you working on it again?
It's been since 2007.
So, since you've been working on this, is there any other projects that you're trying to get started, or have you started working on anything else?
Yes, I have a picture that I want to start shooting in the fall that'll be set in Texas. And again, back to books, it's a sort of crime and punishment, American tragedy story based on a drama there. And I'm excited to get going.
That's really exciting.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
This was so fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for speaking with me.
I really appreciate all of your thoughts.